For a long time, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban did not belong only to themselves. They belonged to interviews, to captions, to carefully worded profiles about love that survives Hollywood. They were quoted as reassurance, used as evidence, borrowed by strangers who needed proof that something lasting could exist in a place designed to replace everything. They never volunteered for this role. It simply happened. Two people who held hands naturally, who didn't flinch under flashes, who spoke about each other without irony. In a town addicted to spectacle, their restraint became a story of its own. They were not loud, they were not dramatic, and because of that, they were trusted. People said things like, if they can make it work, anyone can, as if love were a formula they had cracked, rather than a decision they kept making quietly. What the public never understood was this: the strongest illusion is not perfection, it's consistency. The year everything shifted did not announce itself. There was no headline moment, no scandal, no betrayal. If anyone had asked either of them when it began, they wouldn't have been able to give a date, only a sensation. The feeling that something once shared had started happening in parallel instead. Nicole was working in Europe, deep in a project that demanded emotional excavation.
The kind of work that follows you back to the hotel room, that makes silence feel heavier than dialogue. Keith was touring relentlessly, crossing continents with the rhythm of someone who had learned to stay moving so he wouldn't feel stillness closing in. They spoke every day. That was the strange part. Voice notes, late-night calls, messages sent from airports and sound checks. On paper, nothing was missing. The structure of intimacy was intact. Only the substance had thinned. When Nicole landed in London after a 14-hour shoot, her phone buzzed with a message from Keith. "Did you eat?" She stared at it longer than necessary. Of course, she had eaten, but what he was really asking, "Are you okay? Are you still here with me?" felt harder to answer. She typed back, "Yes, long day. Miss you." It wasn't a lie, it just wasn't the whole truth. The invitation came in early spring, a major European festival, a lifetime recognition award, not for a single role, but for endurance, for longevity, for the accumulation of decades spent becoming someone the industry could no longer ignore. Her team framed it as inevitable, her peers framed it as deserved. Keith framed it simply. "You should go," he said over the phone. "That's a big one." There was no hesitation in his voice, no request to rearrange schedules, no quiet disappointment. And somehow, that made it heavier.
On the night of the ceremony, Nicole stood alone on stage beneath lights that flattened everything into brilliance. The applause was long, generous, almost reverent. Cameras searched her face for emotion, for gratitude, for the kind of composure that reads well in still images. Later, watching the broadcast in a dressing room half a world away, Keith noticed something the audience didn't: the framing. The narration spoke of sacrifice, of solitude, of the cost of greatness. Clips of Nicole over the years were edited into a narrative of singular strength, a woman walking forward, often alone, always composed. There was no malice in it, but there was an implication. When Nicole checked her phone after landing back in Los Angeles, there was one message from Keith: "You were incredible tonight. They made it look like you've been doing all of this by yourself." She read it twice, then a third time. It wasn't accusation. It wasn't resentment. It was observation. And for the first time, neither of them rushed to correct it. The decision to pause did not come with drama. It came with exhaustion. They didn't call it a separation at first. That word felt too loud, too definitive. Instead, they said things like, "We need space to think," or "Let's slow this down before we break it." They remained in the same house, ate dinner at the same table, spoke kindly, almost gently.
Like people handling something fragile they no longer trusted themselves to hold firmly. Publicly, nothing changed. They arrived together, left together, thanked each other in speeches, held hands when expected to. The choreography was flawless. Privately, they began scheduling conversations the way one schedules meetings: short, contained, efficient. Nicole later admitted that what frightened her most was not the pain, but the calm. There was a point, she would say, when it felt easier not to feel anything at all. When lawyers entered the picture, it felt surreal rather than tragic. Conference rooms, neutral tones, water glasses untouched, language stripped of emotion, assets discussed as if they had no memory attached to them. They were polite, cooperative, almost disturbingly aligned. There were no arguments about property, no raised voices. They agreed on everything with the efficiency of two people who had already emotionally stepped back. A date was written down, not circled, just noted. Neither of them said it out loud. There is a particular quiet that only appears in houses where people are no longer arguing. It is not peace. It is suspension. The Tennessee house was designed for retreat. Wide windows, long wooden tables, rooms meant to breathe. For years, it had been a place where the noise of the outside world softened at the door.
During that year, the house observed more than it sheltered. Nicole and Keith moved through it carefully, like guests afraid of overstaying. Mornings unfolded in parallel rather than together. Coffee brewed twice. Schedules were exchanged in low voices, the way colleagues do before a meeting. They were kind to each other, almost ceremonially so, and that kindness became its own form of distance. Adults believe children understand less because they ask fewer questions. The truth is, they ask fewer questions because they already know the answers. One afternoon, rain settled over the property, steady and unhurried. Nicole sat at the kitchen counter with pages spread before her, red pen hovering without conviction. Keith worked nearby, guitar resting against the table, fingers tapping but not playing. The house held them in the same frame, but not in the same moment. Their daughter entered quietly, stood there for a while, watching them with the focus of someone collecting evidence. "Are you two still married?" she asked. The question didn't sound dramatic, it sounded administrative. Nicole looked up too fast. Keith put his hand flat on the table. "Of course we are," Nicole said instinctively. "Why would you ask that?" Her daughter shrugged. "You don't argue, you don't joke, you don't look for each other in rooms anymore." It feels like when people already said goodbye but forgot to leave. No one corrected her. Children don't need confirmation when they're right. That night, Nicole lay awake listening to the house settle. Keith was beside her, turned slightly away, careful not to disturb. They hadn't fought in months. She realized then that the performance wasn't for the world anymore. It was for themselves. They were maintaining a version of the marriage that no longer asked anything of them. No vulnerability, no friction, no risk. In the morning, Nicole made a call she hadn't planned to make. She called her therapist, not to talk about grief, but to talk about numbness. "I don't know when we stopped trying," she said. "I just know we did." The filing date approached quietly, the way serious things often do. No countdown, no emotional preparation, just a calendar page waiting to be turned. The documents sat in a folder on the desk in Keith's studio. He hadn't opened them in weeks, not out of denial, out of something closer to superstition. One evening, as the sun lowered itself into the trees, Keith picked up the folder and brought it to the kitchen. He didn't say anything. He placed it on the table between them. Nicole looked at it. The clean typography, the formal language, their names printed side by side for what might be the last time. "This feels wrong," she said finally. Keith nodded. "I know." It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't a promise. It was something quieter. It was recognition. The next day, Nicole called her lawyer and asked him to pause everything. Not cancel. Pause. "I don't know if this works," she told him, "but I know I don't want to end it while I'm emotionally absent." Keith didn't celebrate the call. He didn't treat it like a victory. They both understood that choosing to stay was more dangerous than choosing to leave. Leaving would have been clean. Staying meant reopening everything they had sealed. The work no one sees. What followed was not romantic. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic reconciliations, no cinematic reunions. There were therapy sessions that left them exhausted, conversations that circled the same pain from different angles, admissions that were difficult to hear. Keith spoke about feeling like a supporting character in a life that had grown too large to share. Nicole spoke about the loneliness of standing at the center of a claim without someone beside her who felt fully present. They argued, they cried. They sat in silence that no longer felt empty. For the first time in months, they were in the same emotional room. One evening, after a particularly difficult session, Keith asked something that surprised them both. "Are we trying to fix what we were?" he said. "Or are we trying to build something we've never had?" Nicole didn't answer immediately. She realized then that the marriage everyone admired had been sustained partly by habit, by expectation, by an image that once reflected something real but had slowly become heavier than the reality itself. "I don't want the version people envy," she said. "I want the version that can survive honesty." Keith nodded. "So do I." There is a moment in every long marriage when love stops being an emotion and becomes an action, not a vow, not a memory, an action. For Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, that moment did not arrive with clarity or reassurance. It arrived quietly, without guarantees, and long after the world had already decided what their marriage was supposed to represent. The hardest thing they had to let go of was not each other. It was the version of themselves that had been preserved in public imagination. For years, they had been held up as evidence, the couple who made it work, the exception, the quiet triumph over Hollywood statistics. That image had protected them, and it had imprisoned them. In therapy, Nicole admitted something she had never said out loud. "I felt like leaving would mean failing publicly," she said, "and staying meant continuing a role I no longer recognized." Keith followed with his own truth. "I didn't want to be the man who couldn't keep up with your life," he said. "So I learned to disappear inside it." Neither confession was kind. Both were necessary. They never destroyed the separation documents. Keith folded them carefully and placed them in the top drawer of his studio desk. Not as leverage, not as threat, as memory. When things get heavy, Nicole would later explain, he takes them out and leaves them on the kitchen table. He doesn't say anything. He just lets the reality sit between us. Reality, unromantic and unfiltered, had become their anchor. Love, they learned, was not the absence of exit. It was seeing the exit clearly and choosing not to use it. When Nicole finally decided to speak publicly, it wasn't calculated. It wasn't part of a rollout. It was exhaustion from carrying a story that no longer matched her life. The interview aired quietly at first. Then it rippled. Headlines appeared. Speculation followed. Commentary tried to assign blame, causes, timelines.
But the loudest response did not come from the media, it came from Keith. 24 hours after the interview aired, he posted a single image, no caption, no explanation, a kitchen table in early light, 2 mugs, a bottle of vitamins, and in the center, a thin stack of documents, the word separation visible. Across the top page, written in black marker, "Are we still trying?"
Beneath it, in Nicole's handwriting, "Always." The image did not invite interpretation, it invited recognition. Something unexpected happened after the truth was spoken. The pressure lifted. People stopped asking how they managed their marriage and started asking how they stayed human inside it. The narrative shifted from perfection to perseverance. Nicole noticed something else, quieter but more important. Keith laughed more freely again. She noticed herself looking up when he did, not out of habit, out of interest. Their story does not conclude with certainty. There was no promise that everything would be easy, no claim that they had solved anything permanently. What they had was a practice, daily honesty, permission to speak before resentment set in, the courage to disappoint expectations, including their own. Near the end of the interview, the host asked a final question. "If you could speak to yourself at the moment things were falling apart," he said, "what would you tell her?" Nicole thought for a long time. "I'd tell her that applause fades faster than connection," she said, "that being admired is not the same as being held, and that no image is worth losing the person who still wants to sit with you in the dark and ask if you're okay." She smiled softly. "I'd tell her that choosing each other again is not a failure of independence, it's an act of courage." That year no longer feels like something that didn't happen. It feels like the year that clarified everything. The year they learned that love does not survive on reputation, longevity, or consistency alone. It survives on one recurring question: are we still here? And the willingness to answer it, honestly, every day.